Hello, in front of me is Jim Ebben, former president of Edgewood College. Jim, I have a couple questions for you. Where did you grow up?
Well, in my early years, I lived in Little Chute, Wisconsin.
Really?
There's an interesting story there, because of course I was born. But I was born in 1936
Okay.
and lived in a Dutch Catholic community.
Okay.
Now there's some interesting Dominican connections that I want to refer to on this, because that's basically, for me, to make connections is very important in life, especially as you get older.
Okay.
And there are a lot of connections that go way back to Father Mazzucchelli and Father Theodore Vandenbroek, who was a Dutch Dominican who came to the United States, as Samuel Mazzucchelli did, as a missionary, and almost about the same time. Father Vandenbroek was the first pastor of the parish that I grew up in.
Okay.
And the story is a little convoluted, but it's interesting to take a look at it because of the meaning that it has for Edgewood. And that's at least the meaning that I have given it for Edgewood. Father Vandenbroek was born in 1883.
Okay.
And he lived in the North Brabant province in the Netherlands.
Mm-hmm.
He came to the United States after 25 years of ministry in the North Brabant area. He just felt that he wanted to be a missionary in the United States. And he came to the United States, or was sent, he got permission to come, in 1834. Now Mazzucchelli came to the United States in 1830.
Oh, so early.
Earlier,
Yeah.
although he was younger. He came as a young man. He was only, let's see, he came in 1830. He must have been like 26 years old at the time.
Okay.
Father Mazzucchelli, or Father Vandenbroek, came when he was about 49.
Oh my.
However, now I don't have a lot of facts that I can refer to, although there are some, you read things and then you sort of put them together. I'm not sure that they ever met personally, although they ministered in the same area.
Really?
Yes. Father Mazzucchelli came to the United States and was sent by the same bishop that sent Father Vandenbroek to Little Chute. He went. His first assignment was in Mackinac Island
Okay.
in 1830. And the ministry was ministering to the Indians and all sorts of tribes, the Oneidas and the Winnebagos and the Bagos, the Oneidas. I think there's a whole chunk is also in that mix. But there were a lot of different tribes that were settled in this area that they covered from basically all the way up to the Upper Peninsula, all the way down to the border and maybe beyond to Illinois, what's currently the border of Illinois and Wisconsin. Now they served the Indians, and they did it as kind of itinerant preachers, although Mazzucchelli did more of that. Basically, he ministered to a lot of people, and most of what his way of travel was by walking. And Father Vandenbroek served mostly a group of settled Indians in the Little Chute area. Now that's one of the little difference that Mazzucchelli probably did more foot travel than Father Vandenbroek did.
Mm-hmm.
The interesting part is that, and this probably, I never read this part that affect Father Mazzucchelli, but for Father Vandenbroek, he was serving a group of Indians, the Winnebagos, in Little Chute. In he started, was assigned there in 1834,
mm-hmm.
and he built his first church there in 1836. But the Indians already had a place of worship that they had made out of animal skins and so on, basically what we refer to as a teepee.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was his ministry. Now, this is at the same time. You probably know the history here, maybe better than I do, but it was at the same time as the Indians were being driven west.
Mm-hmm.
And the Winnebago Treaty of 1837 was probably the capstone on it, where they ceded all the land east of the Mississippi to the government,
mm-hmm.
the U.S. government. So what was happening now, the Father Vandenbroek was losing his parishioners. He was losing the people that he was serving.
Mm-hmm.
And so he had built a church in 1836. And he had speculated in land because he wanted a settlement. He wanted a community. He wanted the Indians to, he thought about the Indians owning the land, but he also was not discriminatory, and he was ready to accept other immigrants who were coming west to settle in those areas. Now, you know, the Homestead Act actually came a little bit later, but that certainly contributed to the immigrants from Europe moving further west. And there were also land grants made to those who served in the Revolutionary War, and so they had pieces of land, and some of those were coming also. But they thought that was the push west. So anyway, Father Vandenbroek thought, you know, I have to do something about this. And at the same time, in Holland, his native land, they were having an economic depression. And he thought that he could go over, and most of his parishioners when he was in the Netherlands were sand farmers. And so, and the land that Father Vandenbroek had here in the valley in Little Chute was also good, rich farmland. And the Indians, some of the Indians, were farming it.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, Father Mazzucchelli in 1847 decided to go back to Holland, the Netherlands, North Brabant, and see if he could convince people there to come to settle in Little Chute, Wisconsin. It wasn't Wisconsin at the time.
Right.
This was before Wisconsin was a state. And he did. And in 1848, he brought back from the Netherlands 3 boatloads, about 300 people. And amongst those immigrating here was my great-grandfather,
Oh dear.
Peter, who was 15 years old at the time. Came with his family.
Uh-huh.
He was 15 years old at the time. So now here is Father Vandenbroek. He has 300. They didn't all settle in Little Chute. They settled but in that area.
Mm-hmm.
But many of them settled in Little Chute, and that's basically where I came from, that stock. And they were all the Dutch Catholic, they're not the Reformed Dutch. They were the Dutch Catholic. And they were, they settled here, and Father Vandenbroek, as I said, was a Dominican priest. Although he wasn't ordained as a Dominican, I don't know if you ordained them as Dominicans not, but he was he was ordained in, let's see, you probably figured this out, 1809, I think.
Okay.
And it wasn't until like 1817 that he was received into the Dominican order. And anyway, at that time he was a parish priest in the Netherlands. Well, the name of the cathedral, the parish that I grew up in, so that we're getting back to where I grew up, the parish I grew up in was St. John Nepomucene. And that the St. John name came from the cathedral of Herodigen Bosch, which was the capital city of North Brabant area. And in that city was a cathedral called the St. John Cathedral. It took over 200 years to build it.
Oh, good heavens.
It was a Gothic structure, really a stately Gothic structure. Just Google it, and you will see what it was like. Anyway, this parish was named after that. But it was that tie now. So where did the name come from? The name came from his homeland, his father Vandenbroek, and eventually, I should get around to. So eventually, they built a Catholic school, a grade school, and a high school in that small town, and those are the grade school and high schools that I went to in when I started, probably 1942.
Okay.
So those were the beginning of the Second World War years. I don't know, you probably have some questions.
Well, I was going to ask you, what was your family like? Like, what did your dad do? What did your mom do?
Well, the family, I come from a large family.
Mm-hmm.
And I was the fifth child.
Okay.
And unfortunately, my mother died when I was 4 years old.
Oh, no.
From TB. So that sort of changed things a bit. I did have one sister who was born after me, before my mother died. In fact, that child birth probably contributed to her death, although she was weakened by tuberculosis at that time. Anyway, I had 4 older sisters than myself, and then my younger sister, so we had 5 sisters and myself. My father is now a widower. And he actually needed somebody to take care of his children, and they were, the oldest at that time I think was 12. And so he did marry shortly after that again, and he married someone with a child, and then they had 2 more children. So we ended up with 9 children in our family. Now I did have one of my older sisters also was affected by tuberculosis and died when she was 16 years old. So that cut us back to 8 at the end. So anyway, my father was, my mother stayed at home, stay-at-home mom. In those days, I guess that was the typical thing to do, and probably the right thing to do also. And my father was a millwright. He worked in the paper mills.
Oh, really?
That's an interesting story around that too. The paper mills eventually grew up. And the term Little Chute is located on the Fox River. And the Fox River was not navigable in 1836 when Father Vandenbroek got there, but it was in the works to make it navigable. But there was a rapid, little rapid, where the river changed levels,
Right.
at where Little Chute is, and so they called it Little Chute. The Indians called it Little Chute, actually. The fur traders, who were using the river for trappers and as trappers and so on. But anyway, so but they so they made the river navigable, and they set up a series of dams and locks and dams, and basically the paper mills then could take advantage of the power, water power, and they built up along the river, and also the river then was used to transport the coal from the Great Lakes down through and got it to this area. And so so the Kimberly Mill was right across the river from our home. We lived on the river.
Okay.
And right across the road, and my father worked at Kimberly. Now, he was a kind of a semi-skilled worker. He was a millwright, and basically repairing the machines and getting them in working order. He basically was on call all the time so the mill, because shutting the machines down was costly.
Right.
So if they went down at 12 o'clock at night, he had to go to work and open them up. So anyway, that get them operable. So anyway, he was a millwright, and I would say that one thing I learned is that perhaps that's not what I wanted to do with my life, and I think decided early on that wasn't going to be for me. Although I did work in the mills when I was summers and so on, when I was going to college, and even when I was in high school, I had little jobs at the paper mill. Now, you asked me, what was our family like? Okay, we were a very close-knit, and we still are a very close-knit family. The family, we always considered the family, of course, the family that grew up in our house, mother, father, and 8 kids, 9 kids. But it really extended way beyond the house. I mean, the family was everybody. I mean, basically, we grew up the village was about 5,000 people when I was growing up. But most people they're all from Dutch descent. Many are related.
Right.
And so you have cousins galore. In my father's family, there were 5 boys and 3 girls. And a couple of them were on a farm. And so that was like our second home. You helped out where you had to be helped, where they needed help. You went. I mean, that was, you got called and you went. And so that was like, these were all homes. I mean, all our homes were.
So you truly grew up in an extended family as opposed to a nuclear family, right?
Well, I don't know. I saw that phrase that you used there, but I'm not sure what you know.
Oh, like when
nuclear family. I mean, a nuclear family might be mother, father, and the kids.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I grew up in that family.
Yeah.
But I mean, we didn't live with our grandparents.
Right.
We didn't live with our grandparents. We didn't live in any other place. So in that sense, I guess I lived in a nuclear family.
Right.
But the family extended way beyond that.
Oh, wonderful. So you had lots of cousins to play with.
A lot of cousins, and basically a lot of work, because that's what you did. You know, there are always chores to be done.
Right.
Somebody always has chores, and you always are there to lend a helping hand. That's.
So Sounds like you had a wonderful childhood.
I think I did. I think I did.
Okay. Oh, what about schools? Describe the schools you went to when you were a youngster.
Well, the schools, now this is another connection with Edgewood, because the schools were staffed with Racine Dominican sisters.
Okay.
Of course, the connection probably being going way back to Father Vandenbroek, who was a Dominican. But anyway, the Racine Dominicans staffed, and I went to a Catholic parish grade school.
Okay.
For 8 years and 4 years of a Catholic parish high school. St. John Grade School and St. John High School and St. John Church.
Okay.
It was all one. And so the school was fairly small. It served by the way, that was the Catholic school was about the only school in town.
Really?
Yes, that's because everybody was a Catholic.
Okay.
Probably virtually everybody. When I was growing up.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't so true today, but many are still Dutch Catholics. So the school basically was served all of the children in that town. The grade school had about 600 students maybe, and the high school 300.
Okay.
So that would be about right, you know. Two classes per grade level, and then you can just multiply that in about 35 in a class or 40, and you get your numbers. And that's basically what the classes looked like at that time.
Okay.
It's pretty much your regimented education. Seats, that's where you came and sat in the morning, and that's where you stayed until you went home.
Okay.
And so that was basically the education. I think I got a pretty good education. And I think everybody who went there, at that time, higher education was not on everybody's mind when they were in high school.
Mm-hmm.
I was one of a few lucky ones who thought that way, and I did go on to college. But most of the young people went to work in the paper mills.
Okay.
There was a good, they thought, a secure job, and that's where they went to work. Or so many of the young fellows, when they graduated from high school, went into service. The draft was still in effect, and
mm-hmm.
they were anxious to kind of broaden their horizons, and that's one of the ways they did it.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking that that's maybe one experience that I missed in life. I never served actively in the service,
Mm-hmm.
and wish perhaps that I had, but can't look back and
Right.
make too many changes.
Well, let's say when you were an older teenager or a young man, what were your intellectual interests?
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure that I had many. Obviously, I guess I was like everybody else, a curious young man, curious about the world, curious about the world affairs.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure that I could put my finger on any specific intellectual interest. I did like to read, although I didn't, as I look back, didn't have a lot of time for reading.
Okay.
Because there was always work to be done.
Right.
Go back to that, and that's really true. But I did remember reading magazines, Time magazine and Look, and so on. Those were sort of my sources of information about the world. I didn't have the internet, as you know.
Right.
So those, it's hard to say. I did develop an interest as everybody else I guess has, in kind of, as I said, increasing the horizon, going beyond the boundaries of Little Chute, which is a pretty homogeneous place when I was growing up.
Right.
And I knew that there was more to life than that, although what we had was pretty good.
Okay.
It was a good life.
I was going to also ask you, what were your favorite books when you were a young man, or authors you liked?
I guess it would be too harsh to say that I didn't have any favorites.
Really?
But I don't think that I did at that age. I did, basically I can remember things that I read in high school, The Ancient Mariner, and so on, but I can't really point to a favorite author that I had. I guess I developed only those interests later on in life. And so I could make up a story about how I admired these. I mean, some of the philosophers later, because I became interested in philosophy,
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed a lot of the philosophy books, but that would be later, college years. Graham Greene comes to mind as someone. I mean, those are college years.
Oh, yes.
Rather than high school. Basically, the high school reading was the stuff that you had to do for your subjects. That's so that your literature class and so on. That was my introduction to Shakespeare and
Mm-hmm.
and those things, and I continue to enjoy Shakespeare very much. But that interest goes way back. But I suppose it started with my English teacher in high school.
Ah, what was her name?
Sister Consolata. Sister Consolata.
Really?
Oh yes, I still can picture her. She was a lovable person.
Huh. Hey, before you came to Edgewood, what were you doing?
Well, that's an interesting story too. Where do I start? I had begun teaching philosophy when I was 24 years old in Kentucky.
Okay.
And I had a master's degree from Marquette in philosophy. So that sort of was the beginning of my professional career. I had been in school for 12, and 4 is 16, and 2 years of graduate school for 18 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was time to get out and do something productive. And so I got a teaching job in a small college in Kentucky.
Okay.
The college was, at that time, it was called Villa Madonna. Today it is called St. Thomas, Thomas More. Thomas More. I don't think they use the word saint, but it's Thomas, named after Thomas More.
Mm-hmm.
And I taught there for 3 years. And then I went to graduate school at Duke University for do my PhD work.
Mm-hmm.
In the meantime, after I started teaching, I started dating my wife, and we got married. After I was teaching for 2 years, we got married, and then we were together as a married couple for the 3rd year. And then we went to Duke University for 3 years. And then I went back, basically this is part of my agreement because they paid for part of my
Oh.
tuition. Paid for part of my tuition, so I went back and I taught for a few years, and then they decided that probably I had some things that I could offer as a dean. So they offered me the dean position at Thomas More College. I wasn't so sure I wanted to do that, but it meant more money. My family was growing, and I hate to say I did it for money, but I did. That was certainly part of my decision. Now, as I said, I didn't know if I wanted to keep doing that. I just, so I did it for a while. And in 1976, I started teaching there in 1961. And I spent 3 years at Duke and came back in 1967.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was there for another 9 years after that.
Okay.
Both teaching and then as a administrator, dean of the college or vice president for academic affairs, whatever the title was. And then I decided that I needed a break. I needed to decide. I needed to really come to grips with I'm going to either teach or I'm going to administer. And so I took time off. 3 years I took time off. Now those turned out to be 3 excellent years for me because I got some government money to do some research on small colleges.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you a little bit about how that came about because it was at a time, you probably know that after the Second World War, the growth of small colleges was rather rapid, all the veterans returning and so on. And then we got into the Vietnam era and people were trying to avoid the draft. And so they flocked to the colleges. And then there was a drop-off. So as these colleges grew, now I'm talking about small colleges like Edgewood,
Mm-hmm.
And like a lot of other Ripon and St. Norbert's and all of those colleges spread across, there are many of them spread across the country. And they didn't overhire, but they hired as they grew, but they stopped growing and they couldn't hire. And a lot of the people were tenured. So they were what we would call tenured in.
Mm-hmm.
And what was happening is that there was a sort of a stagnation at these colleges, good colleges. But there was something that they weren't as vital places of study, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided to do a study of what does it take to make a college, a small college in particular, a vital educational institution. Put together a proposal, and FIPSE, the Fund for the Improvement of Post-Secondary Education, was introduced in probably the mid-70s.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they wanted to do. They had a fund for the improvement. It was a special fund that the government set up. Fund for the Improvement of Post-Secondary Education. And I got a grant for a couple $1 million. That time was a lot of money.
Right.
It still is, but at that time it was good. And it let me travel, and it let me experiment with various things to try to see what was an interview. Basically, that was the biggest part of it, was interviewing faculty and staff, and then it turns out that I got another grant from from Boulder, Colorado, that allowed me to interview students also. Now, the way that came about, the FIPSI people were interested in the inputs. What does it make? What does it make to make a good college? What are the ingredients? And the people from it was an organization called NCHEMS, the National Center for Higher Education Management Systems. And they were interested in student outcomes. So as long as I was traveling around, NCHEMS said, well, why don't you do some work with students and find out what kind of outcomes they are experiencing when they go to small colleges. So I could combine those two. Mm-hmm. What's going in, what's the input, what's the output. And so that turned out, I did that for 3 years, until my grant ran out. Now during that time I had left Thomas More and went, I needed a college where I could run the government grant budget through a legitimate business office. And I had a friend in a college in Michigan, Siena Heights College in Michigan, Dominican connection. It's a Dominican college, an Adrian Dominican college. And he invited me he said, I'll give you an office and a secretary, and you can use this college as a home base as long as you include our college in your study. So tit for tat. So I said, sure, that makes sense. My wife didn't especially like moving to Adrian, Michigan, but it was only going to be for 3 years, mm-hmm. So I thought. And so I went there. It actually turned out to be a good place to raise children, although it was rather isolated. And we had to go to Detroit, Ann Arbor, or Toledo for any cultural events to take place. Although there were some exceptions. Adrian had a summer theater where they put on musicals. And we went to, in those 3 years, well, it turned out to be a lot more than 3, which I'll come to. But that was good. But we went mostly to Toledo for Toledo Orchestra, Symphony, Toledo Symphony, mm-hmm. Chicago, not Chicago. Chicago was well, maybe 4 hours away, but we went to Detroit Symphony.
Okay.
And then Ann Arbor also because of the University of Michigan was a good place for cultural events. So we got, we could take the kids to museums and that sort of thing, which was part of kind of parenting at that time. And so that was that. So I went there for 3 years. At the end of the 3-year period, the guy who invited me there left. He was the dean. He left. And so the president decided that he would like me to stay on as their dean. I said, well, you can't just appoint me. I won't accept just a simple appointment. It's going to have to be a search. So I think he probably fixed the search, but anyway, I was appointed their dean. And so I decided to stay on there in the dean's position. I sort of just come to enjoy through my studies for 3 years, the sort of tinkering with organizational structures to make them healthier as organizations. And sort of enjoyed that, and I thought I'd have a good opportunity to do that, a better opportunity to do that, if I were in a dean's position or even a president's position. And so I did accept that dean's position and was there for probably 3, 5, maybe 5 years. And then that president left and the trustees asked me to take over the presidency but I only accepted it on an interim basis. And so then I did serve as president at Siena Heights. I think it was about 3 years. And then the job at Edgewood opened up. And I came to Edgewood at that time.
Which leads to my next question. What was Edgewood like when you got here?
Well, it was a small community. But I saw in Edgewood at that time a community of people and a mission. One of the things that attracted me here. It was small. There were problems that I didn't even see when I interviewed, but it had good people. I knew that. I met them, interviewed with them, and they were interested in the same things that I was interested in. And so I decided to come. There were the things that were wrong with the institution at the time. I thought, if I could even make a judgment on that, is that the trustees had set up an impossible situation by dividing the internal and external responsibilities of a president's office by putting Sister Jean McSweeney at the time in charge of the internal, and Sister Mary Evans, who had the president's role. She was sort of the outside person. And it sort of created a division within the institution.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, if you have two people who don't always think alike, if you have two parents, and the kid can say, well, if I don't get it from mom, I'll go to dad, doesn't create a good situation.
Right.
I'm not saying it was exactly like that, but that was some of the impression that I got when I was here. And so we had to change that culture a little bit. But there were good people. I mean, basically, that's why the place did so well, because the people who were here. And so it was a small place, yes. And it didn't. The smallness. The thing is that with the smallness, there weren't enough resources to do the things that we had to do. And so the most important thing we had to do was to build the enrollment.
Mm-hmm.
Because we needed more. The tuition revenue was basically our cash flow.
Right.
And if there isn't any tuition revenue, then there isn't enough money to live. And basically that's what was happening at the institution. You had a line of credit, and they always extended it all the way out. And then the tuition came, they paid paid it down, and then they had to borrow again until they, so that basically that cycle, we had to break that cycle. So there were those sorts of issues that, but they were not insurmountable. There were ways out. This was a good place. We had to think differently about the institution, I thought, in the value of the institution, and basically make our case known to the world. Basically, if small, you have to make it known to Wisconsin, to Madison, and then the surrounding areas, and we gradually grew, extended our territory, and Scott is doing a great job today in continuing, I think, and probably innovating more ways of dealing with that issue of student population, which continues, by the way, although we have taken care of some of that, I think, over the years, continues to be, the tuition continues to be the main source of revenue,
right,
for operations. So that the college was an interesting place, obviously. I found it interesting, and that's why I came. And I think people got together and they did what they needed to do. One little story about that is that, of course, one of the things that the college needed was physical facilities. And at that time, the library was in the basement of the chapel. Mm-hmm. It was sort of a musty old hole. But that's what we had, and so that we needed to do. We needed to do something about that, and of course, the first priority for the faculty was a library. Well, we needed a library, obviously, and I knew that. But there's a difference between knowing what you have to do and having a way to do it. And so when I proposed that our first construction, remodeling, was going to be a gym, mm-hmm. that did not sit very well with the faculty. And I could understand that, and yet I had a gut feeling that the only way to get a library, sounds strange, was to remodel the gym. Now, that's for a couple of reasons, John. First, it was a small project. It didn't take a lot of money. Maybe $750,000. The library was going to cost us $3 or $4 million. Mm-hmm. So that was one reason. It was a small project, something that you can prove to yourself that you can do before you take the bigger step and try to take a chunk that's too big to chew. And I thought that taking the library first was not in our best interest at all. Mm-hmm. Not that the gym took priority. Well, in a sense it did take priority, because in my mind it was part of our student recruitment plan.
Right.
We were playing in a college gym that was really a grade school gym. The floor wasn't even regulation size.
Oh.
All right, now you want to recruit a student to play basketball at your institution? You have to play in the grade school floor? Not too attractive. Well, that's the situation we were in.
Okay.
And sports were just in their infant stage here at Edgewood at that time. Steve Larson had just been hired, before I was hired, to be the athletic director, the basketball coach and the athletic director and everything else that goes with the athletic program in a small place where you do where you have one person doing all the jobs. Steve Larson did it. He came from a high school, St. Mary's High School in Menasha. And now he's at a college level, and this is big time for him. And he handled it well. So he was going out anyway. So I had to go before the faculty and say, we need to do this. And it took some persuasion to get them to. I said, the only thing you have to do is you have to support me on this. You can't say, oh yeah, we'll go ahead and do it. But when you go home at night, you complain to your neighbors and your wife, and so that this is a mismanaged institution. They're sticking their money in a gym, and this is an academic institution. You can't do that. We need to be of one mind on this. Only way we can do it. We can't do this. Go and ask somebody for some money, and they say, well, I just talked to a faculty member over here, and they don't think this is the right thing to do. Well, if that happens, your chances of raising money are not very good. Mm-hmm. So anyway, it was a doable project, I thought, and I also had a plan for the money. I had done some research and found out that the Todd Weir Foundation gives money to small colleges, and they like to put their name on things. Mm-hmm. And that they spread around to small colleges in Wisconsin. Basically, they're Wisconsin-based. And so I looked around, and Jesus, so many small colleges got it, and Edgewood never did. And so we went there. We went to the Todd Weir Foundation to give us a grant to fund this. And they didn't want to give us very much money, but I told them that we needed to have it. They were giving grants at that time around $500,000, and then so they started out at $3 million, and I said, no, we can't do that. We want to put your name on, and we need at least a third of the total cost of the project. And this is just a remodeling project, so your name is going to be on a structure that's worth a lot more than what we're going to put in for the remodeling. So you're going to have a nice, and anyway, they ended up giving us $450,000, I think.
Okay.
And then we had a couple of other small ones and so we had it paid for before we did it.
Wow.
We proved to ourselves, it's just like everything else. You have to have confidence that you can do something. And you really don't know whether you can do something unless you do something. And so we got that project done. Lickety-split. And then came the library. In fact, I promised the faculty. I stood up. I really stuck my neck out. I stood up and said, if we do the gym, and you support me on this, we will have a library in 2 years. Didn't have any right to say that, but I did. And we did. The Renenbaum Foundation came through big time, although not really big time. They gave us $1 million, and then they ended up giving us another, I'm not sure on the exact dollars here, another $250 in Bill Young's name, which is the room, the
right.
classroom. I don't know what it is today, but that was Bill Young room. So they paid for probably less than half, but the normal about the third of the cost of the library. And then we did get some other nice, sizable grants when they knew that we meant business, that we were going to do things, and they saw the plans for the library, which were magnificent. This was and the trustees are partly responsible for that because we had a competition on the design. And the one strange thing about the building of the library was, at that time, they, for some reason, insisted that those who were competing with the design had to pair up with a contractor. And so we lost some good design people because this was going to be a design and build project. And so we had a competition, and we had basically three viable plans that were presented to us. There wasn't any question, John, when we looked at the three plans, there was no decision to make. Jerry Dahmer was the designer on this, and his plan was so far superior to anything else that, and they paired up with the contractor construction company out of Plain. Kramer Brothers.
Okay.
The Kramer Brothers. And so Kramer Brothers built it. Jerry Dahmer was the design person on it. It was a great plan. And you see, it's still a great place today.
Oh, yeah. How did you decide you wanted the library where it was? How did you get the idea for the view of the lake?
Well, it came somewhat out of my studies of small colleges, because I traveled around to so many small colleges and saw how colleges were laid out. And so many of them, basically, as I said before, when I came to Madison, I saw this was a community. And you needed a feel, you needed to have that this was a community. And I had this vision of quadrangles for the institution. And this was the beginning of this inner quadrangle that's in front of the library today. This was the beginning of that that I thought about. And that the setting here within the woods, then worked with the designer to make sure that the design was going to have windows that would open up onto that lake and the woods. So basically this site was the kind of one that just came naturally. I mean, anybody who looked at it and saw the kind of the layout and sort of we always had to talk about the larger vision. Where are we going with this place? And at the same time that we were doing this, I was working with Henry Predlin, who was one of our trustees. This was the early years, 1988, on a visual plan for the campus. I'll get to that in a minute, because Henry Predlin is an interesting. You asked about Edgewood stories. I have to tell you about Henry Predlin. No man ever like him. But anyway, so that's how it came about that the library was here. That was part of a lot of thinking, at least, and also came out of my own studies. For 3 years, when I visited so many colleges, and saw what was possible to do if you put your physical plant together correctly. And so that was inspired somewhat by that.
Okay.
But it obviously you can't, the site here, it had to be this site, it had to be, you know, this is the site that we're dealing with. Where in this, amongst these grounds, and that this place just stood out as the place for the library. It wasn't quite as casual as you said. The story is that you put a chair down and said, well, this is it. And in a sense, it was something like that, that put a chair down and then think about it, visualize this as the library. And you can do that if you have a chair and sit down. I'm not sure we actually did that, but anyway, that was...
Excellent. Well, everyone loves the place, that's for sure. All right, so what's your Henry Predlin story?
Well, Henry Predlin was a unique man. He was born in Croatia.
Really?
And he served as one of Tito's freedom fighters
Okay.
during the Second World War. And he deserted after 2 years of fighting in the hills. You know, Tito had this resistance movement against the Nazis, but he was a sort of a dictator himself.
Right.
And so Henry Predlin came from a very wealthy family, as a matter of fact. Father was a shipper on the Adriatic Sea. And they did a lot of shipping to South America at the time. Anyway, the family lost everything after the Second World War. Their property was expropriated, so they lost everything. Henry, after deserting from the Tito's freedom fighters, had gone actually to South America himself, and then came back after the war, and he was basically a man without a country. So the United States, the Allies, were occupying that territory, and they gave him a chance to go to United States, Canada, or Australia, and he chose to come to the United States. So in 1945-46, he came to the United States, and they put him on a transport boat, actually, from Croatia, and he ended up in New York, and then they shipped him by bus to Chicago and gave him a job in the nursery, which he had for a year. He didn't speak English. He didn't have any money. He had only the clothes on his back. But he started a new life in the United States, in Chicago. After the war, commerce picked up, and Henry decided that he could make a little more money driving a truck. So he got a job as a truck driver. And then he saved up his money and bought a truck. And to make the story short but true, he then later bought a trucking company.
Oh.
Perkle Trucking Company, long distance refrigerated trucking. Well, anyway, Henry and Oscar Mayer was his main customer. The trucking company that he purchased was in Milwaukee, and he moved its headquarters to Madison because his primary customer was here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you think about coincidences. Henry Predlin gets here, serpentines his way from Croatia to Madison, Wisconsin. Think about that.
It's quite a journey.
And he consented to serve on my board, the Board of Trustees of Edgewood College. Bob O'Malley was very instrumental in getting him to do that, because Bob was the president of Valley Bank at the time, and Henry banked with Valley Bank. And so Bob put me on to Henry and said, you have to see if he won't come on your board. And so I did. We got Henry to come on board. He only served on the board a couple of years, but he fell in love with Edgewood. And he helped me tremendously in thinking about the institution from a physical plant standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
He was interested, his ultimate end was he's interested in great education. But he also was very particular about detail of structures, all those things, and plans. He always wanted to know, what are you going to do 20 years from now? And so he helped me a lot to think about the institution and the physical plant and the planning. He and I walked the campus many, many times to figure out where to put our front door. We never had a front door.
Right.
That was Edgewood when you guys came. You asked what Edgewood was like. It didn't have a front door. It had a service entry off of Woodrow Street.
Mm-hmm.
It's still there. It's gated today, but it's still that was the service entrance. Well, Henry and I, and a lot of others. I mean, these things just don't happen with two people or three people. But Henry was a principal character there, guiding us. And he and I, it is true that he and I walked the campus many times, but lots of conversations happened in between times. And then one day, he said, okay, I have it. I know where the entrance has to be. And it came right through the high school football field.
Mm-hmm.
You remember that?
Right.
Well, I sort of chuckled and said, Henry, that's going right through their football field. That's probably not possible to do that. And Henry said, well, you asked me for the best place. You didn't ask me for what was possible. And anyway, that got us talking, thinking, arguing, negotiating, and it ended up there.
Wow.
It is there today. We had to move it cost us a bundle.
Ha.
We had to move the football field, and we had to put a watering system in, all those things that were part of it that probably cost us a lot more money than what we should have paid, but sometimes what you want and what you need are expensive. And this was one of those times. But anyway, we got that in, and then this was now, well, Henry was on the board from 88 to probably 91, thereabouts. And then in the early 90s, we started getting the plans on paper. And that's when we did the big structure. It was the library first, and then the science building. But the science building, in order for the science building to be put there, we had to do an infrastructure. And we had, let's see, probably it ended up costing about $20 million, I think.
Really?
For the whole thing, the science building and all the infrastructure. I might have the number too high, but it was a huge number. And we had banked a lot of money during that period of time. Those early years that we were here, the increasing enrollment, we were able to bank a lot of money. But we had to borrow at least $10 million. And that's another interesting story. We did, because we laid the plans, we got the infrastructure, the road coming down, got all the football field. After all these negotiations and arguing back and forth, and with a lot of time and meetings with the city and with the high school and with the campus school, but we got through it, and look what we have today.
Right.
The one little story about the finance committee of the trustees was a great committee, and they were decision makers who didn't always agree on how to do things. And so it came to borrowing this money. First of all, this was foreign to any way of thinking 5 years earlier, because they never thought of. In fact, this is a different story, but I had a plan for purchasing all those houses on Woodrow Street.
Oh, really?
And opening this campus up to Winter Park on that side. But Dan Deviser, one of the trustees, it was such a forbidden topic that he refused even to discuss it. But anyway, it came to borrow. We got to an agreement about we have to borrow this money, and we had a chance of financing fixing the finance, where we could do a variable rate. Of course, then you open yourself up to some risk. So anyway, the trustees, the finance committee was pretty well divided on it. And it took us months of talk about that. We could fix at 5%. I remember that.
Mm-hmm.
Or the variable rate at that time was like 3%. And half of them were for fixing and half was for the variable rate. Well, anyway, we decided on a compromise. Rock Flowers was on the board, and Rock Flowers was a kind of the person who proposed it. But what we decided to do in the end was to go with the variable rate, but budget as though it were the fixed rate, and then bank the difference. So we'd always put in the budget as though we were paying 5%, and we were only paying 3%, so that the difference there. And that went into the bank to be not touched.
Mm-hmm.
Unless there was a time, and it was basically set up as a reserve to make sure that if things flipped quickly, that you were able to handle the difference while you were fixing it.
Right.
So anyway, to our good fortune, or luck, or whatever you want to call it, that fund grew to over $1.5 million of savings.
Mm-hmm.
The difference between fixing and variable rate.
Excellent.
And that was able to do it, I don't know, however it was used. Because I think by the time that it built up to that, I left. So I'm not sure how it was. I imagine it was used well, but I don't know.
Hey, what are you doing? What are you doing currently? New topic. So, what are you doing currently now that you're retired?
Enjoying watching Edgewood develop.
Mm-hmm.
Still developing.
And what's your vision of the Edgewood of the future?
Well, I would say this, John. The college is the community of people. I want it to stay that way.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some physical plant needs that we have.
Mm-hmm.
But the most important thing is making sure that the community continues to grow as a community. I have a vision of what the physical plant should look like. I'd like to see where the gym is. I'd like to see a fine arts building. I'd like to see that parking lot in front of the gym to be a campus green. I'd like to see the parking on the other parking lot as you come down on the right
Mm-hmm.
to go underground, and a gym put there, a student activity center, whatever you want to call it. And then you'd probably still have room for some residence halls. I think those were sort of kind of the immediate needs. I think our immediate need now is the gymnasium. And so that's the physical plant. And the land does have some limitations.
Mm-hmm.
But if you do some creative thinking, you can do some really nice things with what we have.
Yeah.
I know we're always struggling with the city and the neighbors on things, but if handled rightly, we can get there.
Okay. Two more. Of the 5 core values of Edgewood, which one speaks to you the most?
Well, you probably can surmise from things that I said that community is probably, at least it speaks to me as the center one.
Okay.
I mean, if Christ can talk about love as being the greatest of the 3 virtues, hope, love, and what's the third one? I guess we can pick out a value from our values here and say community. But really, community depends on all of the others,
Mm-hmm.
in my way of looking at it.
Yes.
But the thing is, community is where it is. That's where the action is. That's where life is. That's where you hope that people can find their space to grow and develop as individuals, but also to grow and develop in their relationships. Since now Dominicans, as you know, have a saying that at the heart of ministry is a relationship. Now there's a piece of wisdom right there. That's a tremendous, succinct way of defining community. This community is just a network of relationships. And that's what this institution is all about. To the credit of the Cincinnati Dominicans, who have said it in many short, easy ways to talk about it. You talked about family earlier, and it's the family where it's just a different kind of family here. When I came to Edgewood, I saw this community that was here, and it was like a big happy family. Sometimes more focused on kind of personal relationships than on the institution. But that came later. That came later, so that balance between institutional good and individual good is a tough one to keep straight. And that's what we have to do. It's kind of like the common good versus the individual good. Mm-hmm. And the common good, in a way, has to take precedent over everything else. It doesn't sit too well with individualists, but that's, in my opinion, that's the truth. Mm-hmm. So we talk about the search for truth as sort of part of our mission, right? Mm-hmm. And you do that in community. You do it best in community. You rely on each other. You do it best with partnerships. You do it best with justice, however you define that. That's what those values mean to me.
Okay. Lastly, what piece of wisdom would you like to impart?
Well, I don't have any original stuff there. But I do think that I put my finger on it when I said that at the heart of ministry is relationship. Try to unpack that. That's a powerful statement. Mm-hmm. And so, I don't know if that's the piece of wisdom I would refer to, but basically that seems to make most sense. Since you put it in terms of the values that this institution has, that's what I would say, that's to keep that in focus. Keep that in focus. There are a lot of other things that I could say about Edgewood, but I'm sure that I've taken enough of your time.
And I can't thank you enough for the time you've given us.
Okay.
Well, I thank you very much.